I thought I would kind of aspire to write like she does. I love the feeling of sitting down with a book that's like set in a bookstore or just has literary references. I'm hoping that this will be a resource that you guys will leave a bunch of bookish books in the comments. Hello and welcome to another video. I'm very excited about today's video because it involves a lot of things that I really enjoy, or at least it will if all things go according to my plan. The first thing I'm going to be doing is something that I've been inspired by a few of the different YouTubers that I watch, specifically Christiane Jones and Ruby Granger. These are young women who like to write, and I've seen both of them doing different writing routines from authors that have inspired them, but I don't aspire to be the typical writer, so this is going to look a little different. But one goal that I had for this year that I'm epically failing at was to write 200 poems. I was doing so good at the end of 2022. I was writing like 1 or 2 poems a day, and I've written 5 so far this year, and I think most of them were in a vlog a while ago where I was doing like a poetry writing update and video. And so I thought I would kind of take this idea that a lot of these young women are doing and try to write like Ella Montgomery. Now, we don't have a whole lot of information on her writing routines. I know that she had to work other jobs in order to be able to write and kind of squeezed it in with her life, and things were not always quiet. So I feel like I can kind of do this naturally because I have other things going on, and as a mother, life is not always quiet here. Lucy Maud Montgomery, or Maud as she liked to be known, preferred to write in a nice quiet atmosphere, but learned how to write in the in-between stages while working. And there's this great quote by her. It says, "Now, it used to be at home that I thought undisturbed solitude was necessary, that the fire of genius might burn. I must be alone and the room must be quiet. It would have been the last thing to enter my imagination to suppose that I could ever write anything at all, much less anything of value, in a newspaper office with rolls of proof shooting down every few minutes, people coming and going and conversing, telephones ringing and machines thumping and dragging overhead. I would have laughed at the idea. I would have laughed it to scorn. But the impossible has happened. Every morning here I write, and not bad stuff either. I have grown accustomed to stopping in the midst of a paragraph, to interview a prowling caller, and to pausing in full career after an elusive rhyme, to read a batch of proof and snarled up copy. It's all in a day's work. It's trying. However, it has to be done, and I won't grumble. Not one little bit." So that's what I'm going to be doing, and I thought, because I've been reading quite a bit from her first journal, I don't know how many volumes there are, maybe like 7 volumes of her journals, which I'm loving so far. I thought I would kind of aspire to write like she does. I've read a number of her books. The next one that I would like to read soon is Emily's Quest. I love all of her writing and have started the series and not finished it, so I want to read that soon. But I thought I would take inspiration from her writing, especially the way she does it in her journals. She starts this at the age of 14, and her writing is exquisite already. So I want to take some inspiration from that. And then I also have this atrocious looking copy of the poetry of Lucy Maud Montgomery, and since I want to write poetry, I've never actually read any of her poetry, so I thought I would do that as well. I know that Lucy Maud Montgomery was always disappointed that her poetry did not do as well as she wanted it to, as well as her novels did, so that is sad for her. But I am going to be doing some reading of her poetry, and then when I thought about that, I remembered a card that I picked for my TBR this month. One of the cards said, "Practice drawing borders for your poetry book while listening to audio poems." And hopefully, this was suggested by one of my patrons. Hopefully she's okay with me taking a little bit of a twist on this, because I thought, what if I listened to some of Lucy Maud Montgomery's poetry and designed a new cover for this book for myself so I can print it off and put it over top of this. The best part is the picture of Maud on here. So I think that's what I'm going to do. This is going to be my like twist on this card. I'm going to listen to some of her poetry. There is some on YouTube. One poem was read actually by Amy, who I follow here on BookTube, and I found a few other people that have read a couple of her poems. So I'm going to be doing that at some point, listening to it and updating this. I can't draw, so I'm not going to be drawing a new cover, but I think I'm going to be using Canva and probably a bunch of nature-y elements, since I think that's mostly what she's going to be writing about based on the titles of her poems: The Garden in Winter, Grandmother's Garden, Apple Picking Time, On the Bay, Night in the Pastures. Those are all very nature-y sounding, so I think I'm going to make, whoops, some kind of better cover for this. It really won't take much. And then as I was thinking about the cards that I have, so I had this one left for this month. I have two more that I haven't done yet. One is to make a book themed video, make a themed book video, I mean, and I wanted to do a themed video about books, which just messes with my brain to say. So I thought I would tack that onto this video as well. We're going to talk about some of my favorite books that either are set in bookstores or libraries or have a lot to do with books, and as well some that are on my TBR, because I haven't read all of them and there's a bunch that I want to read, so I kind of just want to talk about a bunch of books about books. And then I had one last one, and that is to make a meal slash snack slash drink inspired by or mentioned in a book you are currently reading. And the book that I'm currently reading is a historical fiction fantasy where people can turn into animals, and the last food that I remember being mentioned was this character turned into a bird and ate a mouse. So I'm not sure I'm going to get to this in this video, but I'm going to be aware of it as I'm reading books throughout the day or two here and see if there's something that I can make. If it all happens to be, you know, animal related food, you know, mice and hay for the horses, I think I'll wait on this maybe for the next video, but I'm aware of it and I'm going to be thinking about it. So I think I'm going to get started by trying to write a bit like Lucy Maud Montgomery. Lots of flowery language in poetry is what I'm about to attempt. So far the poetry writing went decently well. I got a little distracted with my kids watching a Mark Rober video about bed bugs. But I still kind of managed to write while that was going on, so this is me replicating parts of Ella Montgomery when she was writing and there was things going on. I think it's probably good to be able to, you know, write in a quiet space, which I can do sometimes, and write when there's not quiet going on. I'm definitely going to sit down at a point when it is quieter and try to do a little bit more. I ended up writing a very short poem about snowdrops, which seem to be such a cool thing. I only ever see them when I watch people's videos that live in England. Oh, the sun does not know what it's doing today. We are still like, well, we got more snow a couple days ago, so there's at least 3 feet of snow in most places here, so no snowdrops. I'll just live vicariously through people that live in places that things can grow already. And I have been working on a new cover for this book. I think the cover is coming along. I need to like leave it for a little bit. Went floral, went kind of like a vintage kind of background, and Ella Montgomery did quite a bit of scrapbooking, like in her journals. She would paste in pictures and things, and so I kind of went with a little bit of a scrapbook feel for portions of it. We'll see, I might add more to that yet or not. I'm gonna go for a walk right away where there are no snowdrops, but there's lots of snow, and then I'm going to maybe work on this more, maybe write some more, and share my books about books after that. Probably with a cup of hot cocoa, because it's going to be, I'm gonna want some warming up after the walk. Okay, it's time to talk about books. I wanted to make a list, like I said before, of books that I've enjoyed, recommendations of books that feature books in a prominent way. So maybe the main character is a bookseller, a librarian, reads a lot, lots of books are mentioned. And then I want to share a few that are on my list that I think will have these categories, but I haven't read them, so they're not really recommendations, but I'm hoping they're good. So we're gonna start with my recommendations. And there's a wide variety here. There's a little bit on the nonfiction side. For the most part, I think there's just one that's like kind of nonfiction. The rest are fiction. Most are adult. We'll just go in no particular order. The first one is my like nonfiction one. This is Book Love, and this is a collection of comics that book lovers will appreciate because they are just so applicable to life. I love this entire book. It's been a while since I sat down and read it, and every time I pick it up to share in a video, I just want to go back and reread it and reflip through it. Highly recommend checking this out from the library to start if you want, but you're gonna want to buy a copy for yourself. Oh yeah, I left my hot cocoa over there. Obviously I had to put it in a bookish mug, in my Sherlock mug. And my hot cocoa recipe is always linked down in the description. I have a blog post with all the ingredients that I use, and I make this all the time. I love it so much. Okay, now more books. The first 1/2, these are novellas in the Book Strings series. And the Book Strings, the first actual novel, is going to be on my TBR, but I thoroughly enjoyed these recently. So our main character in both of these is a guy who saves businesses from going under, and he comes across a different bookstore in each of these and tries to help them make the bookstore succeed. And as someone that has like, I don't think I would really like to own a bookstore, to be honest, because you'd always have to be there, but like the idea of it in many ways sounds really fascinating to me, and it was so interesting to think like, okay, how would I make my bookstore like succeed? And I thoroughly enjoyed both of these. Like I said, I'm looking forward to continuing the series. We'll talk about that soon. Then this one I didn't love, but I thought I would throw it on here anyway because it is interesting. It's The Bookwoman of Troublesome Creek. So this is a historical fiction that is centered around a bookwoman who had a pack horse or a pony and took books to people that were in remote areas. This also focuses on the Kentucky Blue people, and this I read about 2 years ago, and like prior to a year ago, this is kind of like the historical fiction that I had been exposed to, and this is why I didn't really enjoy historical fiction. I've since found some that I enjoy more, but it is an interesting look at the pack horse librarians and the Kentucky Blue people. I feel like it would be remiss to not include the Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society. This one is an epistolary novel. Well, it all starts because somehow a person that lives on Guernsey got a hold of a book that used to be this main character's, I think, and sent her a letter asking if she had more books like this, and like a friendship formed. Really enjoyed this. And then I have a nonfiction recommendation that goes along with it that apparently I forgot to grab from upstairs. It is 84 Charing Cross Road, which is just kind of like a real life Guernsey literary in many ways. It is set, I think, starts right before World War II, and this woman is writer from America, converses with a bookseller in London, and over many years they write letters and she's looking for different books, and as a story it doesn't feel like maybe completed, but that's because it is a true story, so you can't mess with history. I really appreciated reading the letters and the writer's humor. Helene Hanff, I loved her humor. It was hilarious, so very much enjoyed that, and it's a really short book, so a very quick read, but very well done, I think. One that I read last summer is The Last Bookshop in London. This was easily a 5-star book for me, but it did not start out that way. Our main character gets a job at a bookstore, which sounds cool, but she doesn't read books. So I was feeling like maybe I couldn't relate to her, maybe this wouldn't be a very good book. But slowly, as she's working at the bookstore, she starts to fall in love with books. And so that definitely won me over, and it was fun to watch her fall in love with books. So if you haven't read this one yet, this is a good one, but it takes about till like page 75 before I felt like I was really enjoying it / seeing where this was going. I thought I should also mention The Book Thief. It's been quite some time since I read this book. I think it's since before I was on BookTube, so I don't remember a ton, so I'm not going to say much. I think most people have either read the book or watched the movie or know the general idea. Also a World War II book, and this one is narrated by Death, and I highly recommend listening to the audiobook because there are some German phrases which I don't know, but it was nice to hear on the audiobook, so wanted to include that. And then I only have 2 more recommendations. I was actually really struggling with this. I feel like I missed a bunch of books, but I don't know what they are because I can't remember them. So I'm excited. I'm hoping that this will be a resource that you guys will leave a bunch of bookish books in the comments, and then we can go from there. I do have a couple on my TBR, some of the more popular ones, like The Storied Life of A.J. Fickery. I really want to get my hands on that one soon, but I haven't read it yet. This one is A Place to Hang the Moon. This is a middle grade World War II historical fiction. My daughter has mom's picks on here because this is one of my favorites. Our three main characters are sent into the countryside to live, and they choose to bring a lot of their books with them. That's some of their, they leave some maybe more important things behind in some ways and take their books, and they get to know a librarian. They spend a lot of time in the library. I love all the references to classic children's books in here, and the older child kind of starts to read Agatha Christie, and I just loved all those references. Plus there are a lot of hot cocoa references, so this is just kind of like all my favorite things in one book. Two more. These ones both feature writers, I would say. So we've got Little Women. My battery's gonna die. I'm gonna change it. Then we'll talk about Little Women. Okay, so we've got Jo March in here, and I should also mention I'm going to always try to do my best to leave the books linked below if I'm going too fast. You should be able to find the links down there. Jo March is a writer. I love these Penguin, what are they? No, they're Puffin in Bloom editions. I just love the artwork on here too. And then because we've been talking about Ellen Montgomery, I have to put like Anne of Green Gables on here. I think Anne or Sarah from, I'm totally blanking, is my favorite one, The Story Girl. They both love stories, and so those feel like really good ones for bookish people. So I don't know if Anne needs much of explaining. She's got a great imagination, always imagining things maybe a little bit more extreme than they are. I do enjoy Anne, especially after Green Gables. After the first book, I feel like she matures a bit more. But I do know that Ellen Montgomery got sick of writing Anne and kind of wanted to write other things, so that puts a little bit of a damper on the Anne series, but I still love the series. In a letter from 1906, she said, "I am now girding up the loins to begin a third Anne book. This is to be written to satisfy my publisher and public, not myself. I am very reluctant to begin it. It seems so hard to get back into the atmosphere of Anne, like putting on a dress worn years ago, which, no matter how beautiful, still is something I have outgrown and find out of fashion with my later development." And then speaking of writers, characters that want to be writers, Aggie Morton, this whole series, it is like Agatha Christie if she was a child. Aggie is often, she wants to be a writer, so she's often rethinking what she is seeing in author's terms. So there will be parts of the book where all of a sudden it's in italics, and that is her trying to put to words as a writer what she is seeing. So here they're talking about something being hanged. The hangman, usually so cold-hearted, could not help but blink away a tear upon seeing the killer's pale, freckled face. Her light copper tresses had been shorn the night before so as not to impede the action of the rope. So she just kind of like goes off on these like imaginary moments trying to think of how she would write the story. So I like this series for that. Okay, and then like I said, my TBR. So I did mention The Storied Life of A.J. Fickery. That one I think has to do with a bookseller, and that's really all I know, but I've heard good things about that one. And then I was implying this is the Bookstrings, the first actual novel, Twice Sold Tales. I keep hoping I'm going to get to this one really soon. So once again, we're in a bookstore, and that's really all that I know, but our main character from these novels is going to show up. So I'm excited about that because I was enjoying him in here, and I'm excited to see where this goes. This is one that I think I found in a Little Free Library, and it had the word bookshop in it, so I bought it. It is the Little Paris Bookshop. I don't know anything about it. I'm assuming it's set in Paris, probably historical. I get that vibe from this. I'm not sure on a time though. I'm not 100% sure it's historical. I can't find a date. Oh, so cool. Monsieur Perdue is a literary apothecary. From his floating bookstore on a barge on the Seine, he prescribes novels for the hardships of life. Oh, I need to read this ASAP. One of my like bookstores on my bucket list is Words on the Water in London. I want to go to that so bad, so this sounds just like that. And then this one's been on my TBR a few months ago, and then now it's been on my TBR cart for a while, and this one has to do with someone that owns a bookstore as well, I think. Robin has spent much of her life under an assumed name to avoid association with her infamous parents. She thought she'd finally found sanctuary running her used bookstore. And that's as far as I've read. Once I've read bookstore, I'm like, yep, I'm in. Count me in for that. And I think I do have a couple other books on my TBR. I don't have my list here right now, so I'll just pop them up if there is any. I'm very curious to hear, what are some of your favorite bookish books? I know I've read more. Either they weren't worth keeping or I just skimmed over them on my shelves and somehow I just totally forgot that they were about books. I'm not sure. But let me know your favorites in the comments, because I love the feeling of sitting down with a book that's like set in a bookstore or just has literary references. That's always fun for me. Oh, yes, like Parnassus on Wheels is one that I want to read because, and I think that's set in a bookstore. It was mentioned in here. So because of that, now I want to read that book. And then I think this book might mention a bunch of books, so then I'm going to want to read books. And I love it when I read a book and it mentions another book and then I read that book and we just can't keep going. Call me nerdy, but if you're watching this video, I kind of feel like you might be in that same category as me. If you had watched till the end of my last video, you will be already in the loop, but my plan is to kind of only do one video a week for the next month or so, just to give myself a little bit of a break. So just wanted to say that again so that you're not surprised when there is no video this Thursday. So I just finished reading my book, and this one can go on the list of books about people that like books. It is a historical fiction, with a fantastical element, and it's alternate history of Lady Jane Grey, who ruled England for 9 days with a lot of major twists. And I'm going to talk about it fully in my reading wrap-up at the end of the month / beginning of April. But this was hilarious, so fun. Lady Jane is always reading books like The Unabridged History of the Beat in England, Volume 5, and there's all these talks about how much she loves books. So I feel like this should be included in the video and on my list of books about books, because even though we can't relate to the variety of books that she was reading, there was definitely some, you know, they're not real books, but I could relate to her bookishness in many ways. So I'm gonna end this video here. Thanks for joining me as I did some poetry writing and just talking about books and books about books. Thanks so much for being here, guys.